What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Now, one of my subscribers asked me to talk about this, so I'm going to give my reaction to Sergey Kovalev post fight. They did an interview with him, and then Bernard Hopkins was in attendance. So Max Kellerman was able to get the thoughts of both fighters who are scheduled to fight in November. Now, I want to give my reaction, let you know what I think about this. I thought it was a great moment, just great moment for boxing. At first, when they said this fight was going down, a little bit skeptical, but when I start to see things actually that are tangible, like an actual Bernard Hopkins in attendance talking about it, it makes me more of a believer. Now, I know it's boxing. We've had fights like Yorkis versus Brandon Rios that were scheduled to happen and didn't happen. They fell through for whatever reason. So I understand things like that happen. God forbid that happens, because I want to see this fight and it's a good fight. So my reaction to it is I loved it. I love seeing both fighters stand next to each other, and it just looks like the ball is in motion to actually make this fight happen. And I know a lot of fans, including myself, are excited for this fight. Now, one thing I loved about it is Bernard Hopkins came up and Matt Kellerman was like, "Oh, this way, the camera's right here." He's like, "I'm not worried about the camera. I'm worried about what I have to face, my opponent." The level of confidence and composure in Bernard Hopkins is just ridiculous. He's very calm, cool, collected. You could tell he's a veteran. He's been around the block a couple times. And I mean, to me, that signifies that he's fearless. Like he walked up and, you know what I mean? He didn't look like he had any fear in his eye, which is good to see. Um, Another thing I really liked is Bernard Hopkins, how he punked Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman and HBO, and I don't know what it is about Max Kellerman. I honestly feel as a commentator, he used to be like the dude that I looked up to, aside from actual fighters like a Roy Jones Jr. or Andre Ward. When he was commentating, out of him, Lampley, and Larry Merchant and all them, I thought he was the most level-headed. Like, he was the guy, if something was said from a non-fighter, just a regular commentator, I agreed with Max Kellerman more. But I don't know if someone had a talk with him or told him to conform or agree more. But he's been kind of hit or miss to me lately. Like, he's been not the same Max Kellerman. Like I said, fights ago, like, I don't know when it actually happened, but I think Max Kellerman he's become more of what Jim Lampley is than I have seen in the past with him. So that's something I don't like. Anyway, I like how Bernard Hopkins really checked him and put things in perspective. Basically, what happens is HBO, they have an agenda and they're flagrant about it. They don't try to hide it. They don't beat around the bush. I've made videos before, and I actually recently made a video about how I feel HBO's commentary has declined, taken a back seat. I like Showtime's commentary better. I'm not talking about who puts on the better fights. I'm not talking about Golden Boy and Top Rank. I'm just talking about actual commentary. And I think HBO's best commentators are current or former fighters, people like Roy Jones Jr., Andre Ward, and that kind of thing. Anyway, Max Kellerman was talking to Kovalev. He was talking to Hopkins. And basically, he was suggesting that if Hopkins can beat Sergey Kovalev, then that will be the biggest feat of his career, like the biggest trophy, the biggest accomplishment. And Bernard Hopkins really let Kellerman have it. He said, "If I could beat Kovalev, you're acting like this is the biggest accomplishment. Like, everything I've done up to this point in my career was meaningless, and this is the guy I have to beat. And if I can beat him, you're talking reckless." You know what I'm saying? He said, I already proved to you I'm an alien before. And I understood exactly what he was saying. Bernard Hopkins was saying, this isn't the biggest accomplishment on my career, on my resume. It's a good accomplishment, but it's not the biggest, even if I do beat Sergey Kovalev. And I agree with him. I mean, Sergey Kovalev is a hell of a fighter. He's enjoyable to watch. I think he's not just a brawler. A lot of times, if you got power, people just label you brawler, just brawler. You know what I mean? Just because you have power, but he's not. I think he's very composed in there. I see him do things like not smother his work and get over anxious, and start fighting super sloppy. You know what I mean? He took a step back in his last fight. He knew his man was hurt, and he doesn't do like rookie mistakes, like punch himself out to the point where his opponent can come back because he's winded, like Ruslan Provodnikov. Watch the Ruslan Provodnikov fight. That's a straight up brawler. Not like Ruslan too, but this is the separation between big punchers with more intelligence versus a big puncher, and that's really their game plan. Because in the Ruslan Provodnikov Tim Bradley fight, Ruslan had Bradley on Queer Street in the first 2 rounds and punched himself out, wasn't conditioned for those middle rounds, and got outboxed. Sergey Kovalev, he's a good finisher. He has you hurt. He's not going to punch himself out, or at least I haven't seen him do it up to this point. He knows how to place his shots, take a breather, take a step back, and he had his man hurt to the body. Some people from that moment on, like, oh, he's hurt, let me just go upstairs and try to knock him out. No, a good fighter, a smart fighter, will continue investing to the body. You're not going to recover from body shots that quickly like you would from a headshot. So Sergey, he shows that he has some ring IQ. He has some experience, you know what I mean? And he has a big punch on top of everything else. But Bernard Hopkins was suggesting that this isn't the biggest accomplishment, even if I do beat him. So you're just talking crazy. And then Bernard Hopkins also told Max Kellerman, you lost this interview. Like, you know what I'm saying? You sound foolish. And I agree with him. Bernard Hopkins has one of the deepest and most respectable resumes in boxing. Bernard Hopkins, I look at guys like Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, Miguel Cotto, Shane Mosley. Guys like that have tremendous resumes of different opponents, and whether they won or lost, they fought a lot of people. So you look at Bernard Hopkins' rap sheet, he bodied Kelly Pavlik when Kelly Pavlik was the undefeated guy from Youngstown. He was a big puncher, he was undefeated, and he was much younger than Bernard Hopkins. Bernard Hopkins obliterated him, completely schooled him, and to me, Kelly Pavlik wasn't really the same. Kelly Pavlik also looked like shit in that fight, and I think it kind of opened the blueprint for other fighters like Sergio Martinez to later beat Kelly Pavlik. Like, oh, okay, he can't fuck with the movement. You got a little respectable pop and movement. This is how we beat him. Same thing with Tavoris Cloud, another guy much younger than Bernard Hopkins, and he's a big puncher. Bernard Hopkins showed you that he was one-dimensional. He relied just really on his power. If that didn't work, he was like a fish out of water. And other guys like Adonis Stevenson later were able to use that blueprint, outbox Tavoris Cloud, and make him look like shit as well. So Bernard Hopkins, BHOP really unlocked the blueprint for certain fighters. He also stopped Oscar De La Hoya. He beat Felix Trinidad as well. Those are two guys that were just recently inducted into the Hall of fucking Fame. He has 2 fights with Roy Jones Jr. He lost the first one when he was young. And you got to keep in mind, Bernard Hopkins was in jail. He had a stint in jail for that robbery. And he started boxing kind of late. So for him to lose early in his career to a guy like Roy Jones Jr., he didn't get stopped. He lost. And he convincingly lost. But that was prime Roy Jones Jr., you know what I'm saying? And then he later, years later, I think the rematch should have happened sooner. But anyway, he fought Roy Jones Jr. years later, and he beat him. You know what I mean? He's been in there with Joe Calzaghe. He's been in there with Winky Wright. Whether he won or lost, he's been in there with great names, great people in the sport. Joe Calzaghe was undefeated when he retired. He's been in there with those guys. And for you to allude to Sergey Kovalev as being the best accomplishment on his resume, I have to disagree with that, because Kovalev, and trust me, I have a great relationship with Main Events. Those are my people, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not disrespecting their fighter. However, guys like Triple G, guys like Sergey Kovalev, they're great fighters, and I really don't see many people beating them. However, for whatever reason, they haven't fought the upper echelon elite fighter, guys that we know are elite, world-class fighters as pros. I'm not talking about amateur and sparring and all kinds of shit like that. I'm talking about as a pro in their professional career. They have not faced the guys that we know are respectable world-class fighters where we would put that elite stamp on them. I don't put no fucking elite stamp on Daniel Gill. He's tough. He's going to give you a run for your money. If you don't come correct, you don't come prepared, then, you know what I'm saying, he'll beat you. But he's not a world-class fighter like an Andre Ward, like a Manny Pacquiao. He's not that type of fighter where we know his rap sheet. We know what he's capable of. We've seen him. I've seen Pacquiao beat guys that were good fighters in their prime, that were bigger than him, that had more experience in a certain weight division. I've seen that. So when you talk about Kovalev or guys like Triple G, I'm not discrediting them because I still think Triple G is the best fighter at middleweight. You look at Sergey Kovalev, I think not many people, I think he would have beat Adonis Stevenson if he didn't chicken out. Bernard Hopkins has a chance to beat him, and that's really just based on wisdom and that alien blood. But Kovalev has not faced, you know what I mean, cleverly, that was a great win for him. But these aren't world beaters to me, you know what I'm saying? So for Max Kellerman to suggest that if Bernard Hopkins beats Kovalev, that's going to be the pinnacle of his career is stupid. I mean, no credit taken away from Kovalev. If Bernard Hopkins does beat Sergey Kovalev, it is a hell of an accomplishment because really timing. Bernard Hopkins he's pushing 50. He's too much shy of being 50, taking on the most dangerous guy and the most dangerous opposition in that weight division based on his pop, his boxing IQ, his ability, you know what I mean, his toughness or whatever else you want to call it. Adonis Stevenson's kind of running scared, so even though he's the champion, you're facing another champion. So for Hopkins to go at him like that, it shows that everything Hopkins was saying is true. He says, I'm in this era based on hard work, but I'm cut from a different cloth. And I have to agree with Bernard Hopkins. So hell of a fight. I'm glad the fight's happening. It looks like everything's in motion, which is great. Sergey Kovalev, much respect for him seeking the big fights. He wanted to fight Adonis Stevenson. Adonis Stevenson didn't want to fight him. He wants to fight Bernard Hopkins. He wants that gateway to bigger fights and that stardom. But again, you look at HBO, they have that fucking agenda. Don't suggest, you know what I mean, you're disrespecting the legend basically by saying, hey, this guy who hasn't really even fought the top notch, you know what I mean, Darnell Boone, he's a solid guy, but he's not the end all be all, you know what I'm saying? Like, I need to see Kovalevs and the Triple Gs run through Andre Ward the way you've been running through other opponents, you know what I mean? Like, if Triple G ran through Andre Ward like he ran through Ishida or Daniel Gill or Rosado, I'd be like, whoa, this dude, you know what I mean? He just moved up tons of spaces on the pound for pound list. Same thing with Kovalev. If he knocked out Adonis Stevenson, he would move up on the list. So this is no bias. It's no favoritism. It's just real shit. Kovalev is a great fighter and he's a problem, but he still hasn't been tested in the same way Felix Trinidad had been tested at the time he fought Bernard Hopkins or Winky Wright. We knew what Winky Wright was capable of when he fought Bernard Hopkins. So you can't really compare them, and you can't say this is the biggest win of your career. I think it will be a sensational win, really based on the fact that you got a guy who's fucking 50 years old, and he's taking on a big threat. Not a Tavoris Cloud, because I think Tavoris Cloud is limited, as I mentioned earlier in this video. But Kovalev has that big punch. He also has boxing experience. He can box, and he even said that in the interview. He said, I'm not going in there expecting to knock out Bernard Hopkins. He says, I'm here to box, and I respect it, and I like that attitude. And I commend Sergey Kovalev for wanting this fight, pushing for this fight, and trying to unify. Both guys for trying to unify. No bullshit. They just got to business and made it happen for the fans. And this is a great fight. So I like how Bernard Hopkins, he punked Max Kellerman. I like Sergey Kovalev's attitude. He said he's going to send Hopkins to Mars. And ultimately, in November, when the fight happens, barring any bullshit, we'll see who's the best at 175. If Hopkins wins, I give him all the fucking credit. I mean, this dude's already pound for pound. Like I said, he can retire, say, fuck it, I don't even want this fight. And he's still a great fighter. He still has a deep resume. He's still going in the Hall of Fame without a question. Sergey Kovalev, This will be a hell of a notch on his belt if he can beat Bernard Hopkins, because we know he's faced everybody. We know Bernard Hopkins is very crafty. He's very slippery. He has sneaky power. He knows how to frustrate you. So whoever wins deserves it. And I'm just excited for this fight. And that's my reaction for the post-fight interview with Bernard Hopkins, Sergey Kovalev. If you watched it, let me know what you think. If you haven't seen it, I have 2 of the clips up on my Instagram at Boxing Ego. Make sure you like the video. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off.